One of the things I've learned in life is that some of the things I don't think are going to work actually do work. And so it's best not to be too adamant that something's not going to work when actually it might work. When we moved to Dryden, Ontario, and I was working with Northern Youth Programs at Beaver Lake, we were just, as I got there, we were just getting ready to move into a new office. And the building was almost finished, and we were finishing up the building. And probably a month after I arrived in Dryden in 1978, we got there the end of June 1978, and by the end of July, beginning of August of that year, we were getting ready to move into our new office. The problem we had was that we had no phone over there, and it was really difficult at that time to get Bell Canada to install a new phone. I don't know what was going on, but they were way behind on phone installations. And we had been trying for um, over a month to have them come and install a phone in our new building, and it was not happening. And so we wanted to move into our new office, but having an office without a phone didn't seem very practical. So uh, one day Claire Schnupp said, "Well, we'll just run our own phone line. We'll hook up our own phone." So they had replaced some phone wire on the telephone poles along Highway 601, and they had left the old wire just coiled up at the bottom of the telephone poles, and they put the new wire up. So there were these coils of telephone wire laying up along the road by the telephone poles. So we went up and got a few of those. And uh, Amos Esch's house was up the hill from the office. It was probably um, 300 meters from our yards from Amos Esch's house to where our new office was. So we took some of this phone wire and we screwed it into the phone connection on the outside, the box on the outside of Amos's house where the phone wires came into Amos's house. We just loosened those screws and we put our wires on there, tightened the screws again, and there were three wires in the phone wire. So we started running it down through the bush, down toward our new office. We had to put it on some trees to get it up over the driveway so we wouldn't hit it when we came into the office driving down the driveway. Uh, However, we were about, as I remember it, we were about 50 feet short of having enough wire to make the connection to get it into where we wanted it in the office. So, wow, we don't have enough wire. And Claire was like, oh, no problem. So we went to the shop and we got a big electrical cable that had three big copper wires in it. And Claire said, we'll just use that. We'll splice that in and it'll work. I was like, Claire, that's not going to work. Like phone wire is just little tiny wires, and these wires are big. Like they're thicker than a pencil. They're like a pencil lead, and the wires in the telephone wire are much smaller. Oh, he said, doesn't matter. It's copper, and when the signal goes through that wire, it doesn't know whether it's a big wire or a small wire. It doesn't know what the diameter of the wire is that it's going through. It'll conduct that signal just the same as a small copper wire. Copper's copper. Well, I don't think it's going to work. So we hooked it up and took a phone, and connected the phone down at the office, picked it up, no dial tone. Oh, I just knew. Yeah, all right. See, I told you it wasn't going to work. Well, he said the wire's broken somewhere. So we went back to our first um, splice where we had spliced wires together and we hooked the phone. Well, we hooked the phone up first right at Amos's house. And yeah, we had dial tone there. So we went part way down, spliced it into the wire there, and I forget if we had dial tone there, but every time we didn't have dial tone, we'd go back and we'd wiggle the wire until we found where it was broken. Then we'd cut the wire and we'd splice it together, and we would, uh, yeah, we got dial tone there, and we worked our way down. Eventually, we got down to the office and it worked. And so I was wrong. The big wire did work. So we had a phone, but it was the same number because it was wired into Amos Esch's house. It would ring when someone called Amos Esch's house. So if you wanted to call the office, you had to call Amos Esch's number, and then they would pick up, and somebody at the office would pick up, and figure out who the phone call was for, and go from there. It was noisy. It wasn't a very good connection, especially when it rained because the line was just laying on the ground, and when it would rain, it would be extra noisy. So for months, I was working on getting Bell Canada to come and install a temporary phone. At least give us a phone, a temporary phone, until you can come and do the real thing. So after we had our temporary phone hooked up for a month or so, 6 weeks maybe, the Bell Canada technician came and he got to the office and he walked in. He said, "Well, you have a phone." I said, "Yeah, but it's not a real phone. Like it's connected to the neighbors and it uses their number and it's noisy. The connection's not good." And he said, "Well, we do the same thing. So you already have what we would do for you. So I can't do anything for you. You just have to wait to get your full phone installation." So we waited, and I don't know how long it was, but it was months until we had a real phone, and they made the full connection. But my point is, I didn't think it would work because we used a big electrical wire instead of a phone cable for that one section. But it did. And so sometimes it's good just to try stuff, even though you don't think it'll work. Maybe it will, and you don't really have anything to lose. If it doesn't, if that wouldn't have worked, we just wouldn't have had a phone. We didn't have a phone anyway, but it did work. And so we had at least some kind of a phone until Bell Canada came and gave us a real phone.